Alright, so we should be good now. So today this webinar is going to be about, we've been covering in the past few months over the course of the winter structure and alignments. You'll find that on stage 2, structure, being more of the spine, and then alignments, as we've talked about, being more kind of how the joints line up and so forth. And then that's not just necessarily posture, that's how you swing through, how you accumulate energy going into the backswing transition and coming out, and storing that, what we call containing, and then delivering and releasing it. So what we're going to talk about tonight is a little bit different. It's still in the same ballpark, obviously, but we're starting to kind of go a different direction, trying to get ready for the spring. And then obviously the fundamentals, what we talk about, they'll change as we go through spring and then summer. So if you want to study more about structure and alignments, what we've been doing, you can go to stage 2 on the private site, and like I said, there's a lot of information, and that I think everybody, especially new guys, should be should kind of dabble with. And just it takes it's not something you're going to perfect overnight, but the more you watch it, the more you train and try to study it and apply it, the more you'll learn about it and find a lot. Just like everybody that's been in the program, we've had fantastic results, and I think the winter training has been very successful from everything I've got through text and emails with the game. So that being said, tonight it's going to cover rhythm, tempo, and timing. And basically, what are they? What is rhythm? What is tempo? And what is timing? And typically, when I ask players what they think it is, you get all kinds of answers. And so I want to clearly define really what those three are. And most people think that tempo is like the sequence of the swing or the rhythm of the swing, which is like the coordination. And let's just start with rhythm. Rhythm is the coordination. It's the sequence of the swing. So every player has a different sequence. They have a different rhythm. It's not the speed of the swing at all. It's the coordination of movements, literally from the feet, ankles, knees, to the hips, through the core, to the shoulders, and through the arms and the wrist. Their sequence and flow is going to always look different, just because of their basic anatomy, and some of it's what they're trying to do and how they've figured out a way to make their body move a certain way to get their ball flight, which is, you're going to find out here in a little bit, is timing. So anybody says like kinetic linking or kinematic sequencing or all those fancy words, all it is rhythm. Rhythm is a sequence of motion. So we talk about that. It's one of our seven timing components. It's the end one. The reason why it's the end is because if you put, and we'll go through this as we go, like with the flow, contain, the delivery, and all that stuff, the grip or the timing contact, and grip alignment, sustain, and then proper sequential motion. We put it at the end because what you're trying to do is get your the structure of your body and club to build certain things that when all of a sudden you start to let it go in a swing, that the sequence of motion is at the very kind of the end. Because if we can get everything right, for the most part, sequenced up. When I say sequence, it's a little bit different. Kind of a softer motion is what I'm talking about. That's the proper sequential motion, which is it's soft does not mean flimsy. It's very, very, very powerful, and we'll demonstrate that in a different session. But so rhythm is the sequence of motion. Okay. Then you have tempo, which you hear rhythm and tempo. They're not the same thing. Tempo is the rate of activity that you see the sequencing at. So it's, if you take, for instance, players that you may remember, Tom Watson has a kind of a faster tempo. Nick Price has a faster tempo. David Duval and Payne Stewart, those would be slower tempos. And it'll always be that way. There'll always be different tempos on the PGA Tour and LPGA Tour that are high levels of ball striking, and then you have different sequencing. There's not, we have the proof now to back that up, which is 3D analysis. You'll see, and there's 1,000 ways to do it, both with tempo and sequencing, which gives a lot of opportunity to golfers. Obviously listening here, is not one way to do anything. And so, if anything, that's what we're teaching you, is to teach yourself, is that you got to find your way, and that's going to be the most important thing here. So tempo is just the rate of swing. So, and and then timing is basically the way I think of timing is, you know, you have to have respect with the baseline is with the baseline plane, which you guys have heard me talk about and seen in the videos. It's certainly in respect to that. It's also the shaft. You're dealing specifically with the shaft and the face. You can eliminate the body essentially, but you got to have control of this, the shaft and the face, and then of course the timing contact point. You could call it a million different things, but it's truly just raw timing, which is basically the compression. And when after you strike a shot, it's the compression which you strike it at. It's the initial start line that you have the ball on. It's the trajectory the ball launches on, and then it's ball control. So that could be in ball rotation. So it's ball control and ball rotation, meaning basically that if you hit a 7-iron, that you hit it exactly the distance you want to hit it, and the curvature would be, or ball rotation would be, if you were trying to draw it, you draw it. If you try to fade it or hit it straight, whatever it is. So after you hit a shot, every time you're going through the program, if you're doing the 5-yard scale or the 10-yard scale and you're working on your swings, you should be grading those 4 things every single shot. You should be grading the level of compression that you created from face to ball, the initial start line trajectory, and then the ball control. And that should happen literally every shot. And then you kind of figure out at that point, you know, kind of what broke down, what caused the timing to be, you know, obviously good or bad. And then you kind of start eliminating, process of elimination, and then you realize there's going to be one way that does it the right way, and then you roll with it. So timing is just, it's not related to tempo. Timing is not related to rhythm, and as you'll see, I can put my body in a really bad position, what I consider a bad position for both my spinal health. Biomechanically, I can hit it off my right foot, my left foot. I can be hitting it standing up. If you have great timing, then that means that you have control of the club. And so it's not really relative to your body. Now, I don't believe that you should be taught how to. I think you should be able to taught how to do it, like we teach with a timing contact point. When I say this, it's basically, I think you should be taught with how to use your body and your body weight against the golf ball correctly, but ultimately it's about your timing, whether you're going to be any good or not. And because your body may be in perfect position to strike does not mean that you're going to have that hand-eye coordination to deliver the shaft and face the same way every time. So you kind of have to know both, really what you're dealing with when you're doing the program. But I will say this: most amateurs, when their body's out of position, the club's out of position, and so forth. But you know, your best friend's going to be what you're holding, and that's that golf club. So now with that, I'll go over this fairly quickly, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. And it can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about the topic that we're on tonight. You can ask any questions you want relative to your game. But so when you're dealing with the float, so that's one of the 7 timing components. You're really dealing with rhythm and tempo in the float. So that's a rhythm and tempo fundamental. You're dealing with a rhythm because you're learning how to sync your body, get your club into position with your arms that are going to allow you to deliver it better, and so forth. But it primarily is a rhythm and tempo fundamental. When you go to the containment part, you're dealing with rhythm. That's a sequence. Okay. You're really not. There's a little bit of tempo. It's primarily a rhythm fundamental. It's a sequencing fundamental. The delivery is going to be timing. So you're still dealing with sequencing, but in general you're dealing more with timing. So that, you know, the delivery, you'll see in the news. We took the 7 timing components. So if you're brand new, you'll see that. Well, you wouldn't have seen it, but we just took off the 7 timing components, and I'm doing a new video. I should hopefully have it up tomorrow. And it'll be probably around the 4th video on the site. They haven't changed. The only thing that's changed on there, it used to be release. We've changed that to delivery. It's a better word. I'm very much a proponent of Hardy Pinnock, and Hardy used to say things that the way you word something sometimes is sometimes all the difference in the world on how a player will actually react. Like he wouldn't tell players like his junior golfers to choke down on the club. And you know, it's a pretty common fundamental. If you're getting around the greens, choke down on your grip. He wouldn't say that because he didn't want him to think choke. He would say place your hands lower on the club. But everything he did, he had hundreds of those. And so with that being said, you know, I think we've got everything in the right. I think we have the right labels and the right names. I don't like the release as much anymore because of the fact I think it makes people prematurely do it. Delivery makes them think about really what they're trying to do. I think it's a better word. So that's the only one that's changing out of there. So, but you'll see that on here. So delivery is more dealing with timing. Your timing contact point is pretty much self-explanatory. It's timing. The sustain zone, you're dealing again. You're kind of getting you're dealing with some timing and back to rhythm again, and grip alignment point, and then sustain is those two would be more again dealing with rhythm. There's still timing involved, but the true timing ends at the timing contact point. Once it's gone, once that ball's out of there. The reason why we have the grip alignment point and the sustain zone is because it aids to better timing in general from most amateurs. There's players that don't really have that perfectly, like Fred Couples, and there's a couple others on the tour, but most of them, your highest level of ball strikers, will have the grip alignment point that you see that we teach, and that sustain zone. And so those are kind of to backtrack and help you aid with to timing. So, and then of course this proper sequential motion, that's kind of like putting icing on the cake. It's basically after you've built this swing, that way you got great timing, you've got this float and all this stuff. It's just making it all flow from joint to joint to joint where you don't have any blocks. So it's basically kind of flexibility and even strength. It's more kind of the physical aspects. Also can be mental, so that you're playing without mental blocks, which can certainly affect the physical and so forth. So hopefully that helps you. I think it's really important to understand what these three things really are as a player, because you go out there, you hear all kinds of different things, different answers, and players don't really know the difference. And I do think it's very important to understand the difference between the three things, and then understand also where within our program, those seven timing components, how they work and why we're doing certain things, and so forth. And so anyway, right now I want to open it up. As most of you know, the new ones are on here. We typically go over the swing, we'll be analyzing and all that. We're really not going to do that tonight. I'll rather just open it up for questions and answers. I know we have a lot of new guys on here, so sure they have some questions, but the veteran players that are on here can certainly jump in and as well. So with that being said, fire away. And if you're not, if you're not on a computer audio, then you can just chat your questions in. I'm getting chat, it looks like today, so you can fire those in as well.
Hey Matt, last time you were talking about using the conversion drill, and I was looking through the site trying to find it, and I was wondering if there's a section or if you have a video of that up on the private site, or is that something you sent out through email?
Yeah, that one was on the, I sent that on an unlisted email, the conversion drill, and what I'll do is I can put that up on the site, it's not a problem, but the conversion drill was with the girl I was working with, if you remember, where we were working on shallowing out her downswing, where she could deliver the club better. She was way over the top, and then it was showing how I'm training her, and then the conversion drill was like how we converted it in real time without doing a drill or anything like that. And that's probably it's not posted on the site. It's a great video, I think, personally. It's really for players. You could do it with anybody, but it's really a player that's over the top, not necessarily steep, but players that are over the top, or I guess you could say steep, because they're not the same thing as we've talked about before. But it would help with that player. If you're under the plane, probably not the best video in the world, but so yeah, I can post that up, and I can then probably put a title on it, kind of explaining what it is and so forth. But yeah, it's called the conversion drill. It's a fantastic drill because if you are a player that's over the top, and so that would be, I'll just kind of go up. So how do you classify that? Obviously, Justin Rose isn't going to do it. There's players that are very steep. That means that you'll see, like, so when I come down here, he's got the angle the club head is away from his hands here, and we're not even talking face, but just the angle that it is. So that would be steep where it's vertical. Over the top's when the club head gets here. So a lot of times players won't get the club really over the top, the club head over in this place until maybe, you know, down in this area. And it's because obviously that they're casting the club in that direction, usually because they're trying to fire the right side of the spine outward, and so and they're connected. So a casting action plus the pulling from the top is where that comes from. And so yeah, that video, that's the conversion drill. The conversion drill, if you're not steeper there, it's not. I mean, it's still a great drill. I mean, I worked with it with several actually tour players. It's a fantastic drill regardless, but it's really good as far as taking a player that's trying to fix over the top or really steep and shallow it out.
It required a partner to do with.
It does. It does require a partner, and I've got the video that just shows you how it's done, but we could also break another video down and show you how you would have your partner set that up, because I think that's really important as well. It does require a partner though. Yeah, so yes, fire away if you. And it doesn't have to. It can be about your swing. It can be about past webinars. It can be about, you know, whatever you want it to be, and I'll do my best to answer. Guys are easy tonight. So what we'll do is somebody has one, just fire away, but just showing you basically where we were talking about earlier. This stage 2 is where we've been training at. This is the website, private site. You'll see that this stage 2 really covers kind of where we've been the last, I would say, let's see, the last 3 months maybe, something like that, pretty close to that. Somebody had a question here. Let's see. Maybe not. But so this is, if you want to catch up with what we've been doing, this is, you'll see these videos here. That's showing about rooting and structure and alignments. Same thing here. That's I think a follow-up video, which was really good. These three. It's showing the middle and the lead side of the shaft. That's a great one, and this is how to use mass and momentum. Those really cover a lot about what we've been doing. This is a lesson I have with one of my juniors. She's a really good player here in Austin. She'll be definitely playing collegiate golf, but she's weak. You'll see as you watch the video, she's weak in a lot of areas structurally, but she got good timing. I can assure you that. But as we fixed her, this lesson was maybe a month ago, I believe. But we've really worked on her structure, keeping her where she's supported, you know, all the way from, you know, backswing transition into the through impact, and she's done a really good job in totally different player now ball striking. So what it did is it just aided to better timing. She had good timing before. She could hit it straight. She could hit it a decent distance, but she's not even close. Just by fixing her structure and working on that, and we did that by also working with kettlebells. She's been working out with the kettlebells, trying to create more depth in her hits naturally versus trying to force it in there in her golf swing, because she plays competitive. So I always try to get I don't care if you're a junior or an adult, if you're 60 or you're 12, I believe that you have as many things you can do naturally that keep you from trying to think of the swing, that you can get away with, the better. And kettlebells and functional training do that. So let's see. All right, so as far as sending video clips to us, no. The reason why we don't do that, one, with the amount of players that we have, it'd be impossible for me to truly study them, and I would say even you know, it just would be impossible physically from a time standpoint, but that's not why we don't do it. I mean, we could have that with if we had other instructors do it and all that stuff. But the reason why we don't do that is the reason why we don't want you to send video clips into us is because you're sending video clips to us. The goal of this is for you to study your own swing, and you to find you. And we say that, of course, in the video. This is all about you studying your swing, getting familiar with your swing. If you send it to us, your video of your swing, I'll make a video and then send it back to you. The communication, the language I'm speaking, especially if you're not studying, but if the language I'm speaking and what I'm saying and correcting is probably going to be, you're probably going to transfer that and relay that differently for yourself. And so that's the reason why there's several companies that do that, where you send a video and they send it back, and customers last about 2 weeks and they realize they're not getting any better and it's out of here. And we don't do that because we found a lot of success by players really taking their time to study their videos, getting used to their golf swing, and using our site to kind of help them, guide them to what we're looking for and how to get them to where they're trying to go. And because we have a lot of options, you'll see, we just did the video on the variable planes, and we put that up. I'll see if I can find it on here. Okay, let's see. Okay, the variable planes of attack, we did that, and this helps players really understand, that you can come in from a very upright plane, a neutral plane, or a kind of a flatter plane, and how all that works and how to make it work and so forth. The reason why I'm saying all this is because you're going to fit into one of those modes. There's a big variance as far as like where you can attack on the downswing, but then there's a few things that you have to have control of when you do that, and so that's where the timing obviously covers that. Timing contact point, that training grip alignment point helps with that. Floating can help with that, but it just shows you that there's a lot of ways you can attack. And so you'll hear me talk primarily about a neutral angle of attack, and we define that in the site and all that. But it shows you there's not one way to do it. There's many different ways, but we've seen players that have neutral plane that look like they should be able to just be a world beater, and they can't break an egg. And I've seen players that are I shouldn't say necessarily over plane, a very steep plane and a very shallow plane that look like they're going to be in trouble with their swings, and they're phenomenal ball strikers. And that's kind of what we talk about is that timing trumps everything. But if you can accumulate more torque and more power in transition, and you have great timing, that's the 2-for-1. So, but the main thing is just you have to study, like we talked about, use your iPad, reverse the camera, study your swing, get familiar with your swing instead of somebody else's, and so forth. Just use our site to help guide you to what you're really trying to do, and so forth.
How many of the different, timing elements do you recommend, or do you think are realistic to work on, like, at the same time? So whether that's, thinking in circle, the plane, the weight shift, all those different things. Like,
when I can't show you now because I took it off there's 7 timing components where I consider that they aid to timing. You'll see in here, like with what when you're talking about the plane and all that, that's like under here, the 3 basics concepts to keep in check. That video right there will help players. But when you want to spend your time understanding the float, I believe, because that's covering transition, and because players, as you've heard me talk about on every webinar, is probably the only one I haven't really mentioned it yet, but like if every single player that comes to us, I don't care if they're online or if they're coming here, to the golf schools or whatever, their transition's not good. And I don't mean coming out of transition, so I don't mean like when they're starting the club down steep or underplane or over top or face or any of that. I'm talking about their just transition is not good. And what does that mean? It means that they're too fast in transition. They don't understand how to. They either collapse in transition, which is like a weak, flimsy collapse, which is all wrist and arms, or they're just really stiff and they're snapping everything, whipping it out of transition. And in transition, what you're trying to do, it's a place where if you can think of like Kenny Perry, it's not. I'm not saying you swing like Kenny Perry and all that, but if you can visualize what Kenny Perry does in a Jordan Spieth and a Freddie Couples and Tiger back in 2000 when he dominated the world, they had this. They slow down their transition and accumulate torque. They're in no rush. The fastest part of their swing is it's going to be halfway down in the downswing, but in general, their backswing is faster than transition. It's like they change gears. They go from like their backswing will go first to third, and then they'll go back to first gear in transition and coming out. And that's what you want to do. Every single player that gets better in transition gets better at golf. Whether it's Tiger Woods, Mrs. Smith that's 90 years old, or whoever that's on here. If you get better at transition, you get better at golf. And so we go after transition, and that's simply the float. We start the first component really that you're going to be dealing with that's not relative to timing. You know, we talk about the timing contact point, the grip line point, all that. But the float is basically you're creating your potential. You're finding your torque of your body. You're trying to let the club and the body come together as one. And they really do. A good player feels that. They feel like their club and body connect together, and then they can use that all against the golf ball. Because what happens if those two components, your body and club, are not, if your body doesn't know where the club is at, then it's just going to take off and outrun it. And if your club doesn't know where the body is, it's just going to slam down, and your body's sitting there going, what's happening here? You know, I've hit the ball, and I didn't even get to use my mass against the ball. So they don't ever get connected together in transition, and so therefore you can't use the whole mass and your whole body weight against the golf ball. And so forth. And so all the cool stuff that we've been talking about, structural alignments and all these great things, those are all potential things and all that stuff. And that's to really get, and they're all very, very, very important. But you have to understand how to accumulate torque and find that energy in transition. And the simplest way to do that, not the only thing, you can't just, slowing down and stopping is, yeah, you're going to get the body and club connected. It doesn't mean you're going to create torque, because you have to kind of watch the videos about syncing and how to kind of get in there and find it. But you have way more time in transition than you do any other part of the swing. You know, the worst thing you do is swing back super slow backswing, then all of a sudden you're going to jump out of transition because you didn't accumulate. It's too slow. You want to go back at a normal rate, normal speed, then change gears and drop, and either stop the club, which I recommend for the new players on here. Just stop everything, body and club up there for a second or two, and then come down. And what you'll notice is when you video your swing, you're not stopping at all. But I would physically, it wouldn't bother me if everybody on here didn't just stopped, because I know at least at that point you know the body and club are. Doesn't mean you accumulated a lot of torque. It just means that you can use those two elements against the ball, which is going to increase the sequencing, and it's also going to help with timing. So the float is, to answer your question, float is first and foremost. Alright? And then once you learn how to float, because float is about accumulating torque, just like I said, it's about correcting transition, it corrects tempo, it kind of does everything. It doesn't fix timing, because you haven't hit anything. It's just you're creating all this potential energy to potentially use against the golf ball if you just have a halfway decent delivery. So then you have contain. So if I have Justin Rose here, let me erase this stuff here. So if he went back and he's collected this torque here, and it doesn't matter where his arms are; it could be everywhere. It's just he's found his torque for his swing, and then from here, what's happened is he's going to contain that. Now, containment would be all the way technically until there, but really, what we talk about in our videos, like you see, we talk about just getting this first part 6-8 inches right here, containment of the shaft, and then the rest of that is delivery. All right. Now, that doesn't mean you cast the club, you know, way away from you or anything like that. It just means you're using the side of the shaft a certain way, and that's that's like I said on the site, teaches you how to do that. But the containment is this: you got the float here, you contain then you contain the torque and the energy, and you're setting up the delivery, and then from here you just deliver it. Okay, then you got the timing contact point right there, and then the grip alignment point. Let's see. I have to go to go to a face on so you can see the grip alignment point for the new players. So with an iron and a driver, it's different. The timing contact point would be right there, whoops, where the sole of the club hits the ground. It's not where the contact is. That would be with the driver it would be. Where the sole of the club hits the ground, that would be the timing contact point. There's the grip alignment point right there. And so everything's in a straight line with the foot, the knee, the hip, and the armpit right here. You can even say a little bit outside the armpit where we're at. It's actually one frame less. Right there would be the grip alignment point. So those are your timing components. Those are the primaries that you're going to be dealing with. Where if you were saying, well, you know, you're working on that, so that's where I would say you spend most of your time in the float trying to. It's not a wrist thing; that's a whole body thing, and spending your time understanding that, and then learning on how to you know, control the side of the shaft and improve your timing contact point. If you do those. Side of the shaft would be aid to timing. So if you improve that in your timing contact point on the first few videos of the site, you're going to be in good shape. I can assure you that. The containment, it just depends. Some people do contain. You have to study your swing. Everybody on here is going to be different. If you contain the shaft here and you've got this is good, you're good. Well, then you don't really need to work on it. I mean, if you're good there, you might have to check the pressure of it because this angle does not mean that it is good. You could be super stiff here, or that's something you'll have to learn about, the internal awareness and how to find all that. But if you're coming out of this position and your club head is right here, that means you're casting it. It means you have no containment, and that would I would say 90% of that is because the club's collapsing in transition. It's a transition thing, but it could be that you stabilize transition and then you just cast the club head straight away, I mean, just you stop the handle and cast the club. And if that's the case, you have to work on containment. All right, so containing the shaft, keeping the club head up above the hands and behind, and that's in those 4 essentials that we talk about. So you have to study your swing and find out what you need to do. What I do not recommend that you do is, as I've said before, is just go out and do this stuff as a swing thought. I mean, you really are very limited what really works with swing thoughts. It's not like you're going to go try to float one day and then try to contain one day, and the guys that do that are not successful. The guys that build their swing from a 5-yard scale and 10-yard scale up with a sand wedge and are very disciplined, trying to make the components feel and train it in those zones are the ones that are very, very, very successful. The ones that just go take full swings and go hit thousands of range balls and doing it with a 7-iron driver, trying to do all the stuff, they're not going to be successful here, but they're not going to be successful in any program. I don't care who their coach is. So the way to be successful in the program and how to train is going to be with a sand wedge in places you can feel with your 5, 10, 15, 20 yards. And I prove to guys all the time when they come to a school, if they're, let's just take you have a big over-the-top slicer. When you break them down to 15, 20 yards, they're over the top and slicing it too. It just doesn't have enough speed on the ball to show you. But their neuromuscular patterns, their brain, the way they fire, it's exactly the same. They're doing it over the top. If they're underplaying, they're underplaying. If they're hitting it thin, and with a 7-iron, they'll be hitting it thin with a sand wedge, hitting it 20 yards. So what my point is it easier to fix it at 150, or is it easier to fix it at 5, 10, 15, 20 yards? And it's definitely easier to feel it because you have to be your own coach. And there's no way, there's not a player on here that can take a 7-iron out and feel everything that happened in the downswing. There's just absolutely no. It's automatic. It's a flash. Even a pro that's watching you, you can only see 10 frames per second. That's the human eye. Nobody breaks that rule. Not Butch Harmon, not Tiger Woods, nobody. You can only see 10 frames per second, and most of that's in the backswing. So there's only 1.2 seconds. So the downswing is a flash. So my point is with that, you can, in a short shots, in these 5, 10, 15-yard shots, you can feel if you're being soft and you're doing it slow and using, like we talk about, you can feel these things that are going on, the flipping it through impact, the spinning out of it through impact, or the casting of the club even from 20 yards. Guys are casting it and not containing the energy of the shaft and body. And that's how you learn golf. And that's how you develop up, and you just graduate. And you get 5 yards, go to 10. You get 10, go to 15. And the 10-yard scale is pretty simple: 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. But don't go from 10 to 70 or 20 to 100. You know, really, because you're really on your own. learning this stuff. And guys are successful every single day in this program, and they're doing the ones that are just doing the 5 and 10 yard scale. I can't tell you how good that they get. They can, but I'm sure they're on here. But it's amazing to hear the results that they have, and it's just because they stay with the program. They don't try to go make a swing and feel it, because it's impossible. You're not going to be able to take a 7-iron or driver, even a full wedge, and just feel it. You have to make your swing automatic. And what I mean by that is where when you let it go at full Mach speeds from 60% to 80% full Mach speed, that it's just being out. It's out of control, but it's a good thing. So right now it's out of control and it's a bad thing. So you have to get to you build it in an order in these short swings where you can feel it, you can change it, you can adjust it. Then you start getting confidence and you're changing these scales levels and you're working yourself up. And the next thing you know, you're taking a driver and you're just crushing it. It's not about trying to fix the driver or fix the 7-iron or fix the 3-iron. It's not about that. It's about making your swing work up these scales into where you graduate, and then all of a sudden it's just there. That's the goal. Which I think was a great question you asked, because it's easy when you get into these webinars sometimes as I do these topics and so forth. Understanding how to train is very, 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 very important, and never bypassing the scale, and just always training with the sand wedge. Really not hitting a lot of golf balls. Don't be a range rat. Don't be a lab rat. Just try to study your swing and make yourself better. Forget everybody else.
Yeah, and I find that getting up to the zone 3, things feel pretty good. Ball's going where I want it to go, consistent distance. But it's that jump to 4 and 5. It always seems to go a bit sideways. But I know that's where it kind of gets more difficult. It's just more reps, I guess, in the earlier zones.
Yeah, and Trevor, you're pretty new. You've been in about 3 weeks now, is that right, or month?
Yeah, about 3-4 weeks.
One thing that we've done too, and I'm working on it right now. Some of the new guys, you were here whenever I had the 7 Tommy Convona videos up, and right now they're off, and it's not because we're doing away with them. It's just that I'm in the process of making a new set for those. But one of the things that I came up with, and I've had this program 8 years, and I've told this story to some of the guys, but obviously not everybody on here. I've been working on, or actually this is my 9th year developing this program, and so the program has changed. We have never got away from what we do. This has always kind of been, but in general, the videos have changed. We always update, and we're always trying to make it better. And as I like to say, I'm on a journey. I'm not at a destination with my teaching and so forth, and it never will be as long as I'm here. So it's always going to, if I think I can do something better and make you better, I'm going to put it out there. I'll change what we do to make that adjust accordingly. And so that's one of the things. Now, one thing going to that is we have those zones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think the zone trainings are good. We're not going completely away from that. But what I will say about zone training is that what I'll find is, because I built it, so if anybody's fault, it's mine, is when I built it is zones 1, 2, 3 guys do really well. Well, there's such a big jump from 3 to 4, and in 4 and 5 are about the same, but from 3 to 4, where I built it, there's this big gap. And so I don't know that we're going to try to feel that. I don't know exactly what we're going to do with that. But you're not the only one that's ever had a problem with that. But way up, we've found that the best solution for that is, for the players, is to, instead of think of the zones, because you understand the zones 1, 2, 3. Now go to yardages. And so instead of if you hit how far do you hit your zone 3? Sand wedge.
Try to say 50 yards.
First of all, I would make your zone 3 only 15 to 20. Okay. That'll help you a lot, because you're probably in a zone 4 right now, and then you're probably over. You're
right,
way
I'm
over.
In zone 3, but going well past that probably.
Yeah, so change it to 15 to 20 yards. There's a couple videos that'll help you with that, and I can maybe let me see if I can pop them up. So. This is a lesson I worked with a kid. It's a 10-yard scale where I talk a lot about that. Now he's a high 90 shooter when he came into here, and then it's a little off the subject, but this is the 10-yard scale. You'll see me training with him on this hour. And it was a tough lesson. The kid was struggling, and it was blah 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 blah. And then this is the kid now, same kid. If you want it, this is a good story. He's down. He's shooting 78s and 79s now, and he's averaging 39, 40 putts. So his ball striking is at the level now where if he was putting was just at average at 30, 31, 32, he'd be scratch. And it's not, because all he did was for the last 4 or 5 months was just train, really just broke him down and built his swing from 10 yards up to 100. He had 8 lessons with me where he never hit anything above 50 yards. We did literally from 10 to 50. And then all of a sudden, once he got mastered that, 60, 70, 80 became very natural for him, and all of a sudden the guy can really strike it. He's probably on here tonight. Let's see. No, Ricky's not on here. But anyway, bottom line, that's a really good one, and it shows how small zones that we train in with the players. I think this was a good. Yeah, this one's a good one too. The understanding the ball striking, chipping that progresses up the scale. That's a good one to learn, because it talks about the variances of, because it's not just chipping. You don't want to get out there and you're trying, because some guys when they chip they really cut the ball, and so that won't progress up the scale, or they flip it and they kind of catch it clacky, but they're decent chippers because they kind of figure out how to flick it. But then if you add speed to that, then it's bigger flick, and then they get nothing out of it. So that's a good video, and it shows you how small to start. And so your zone 3 would be, your zone 3 should be no more than, I would say, 15, 20 yards for anybody on here. And your zone 4 would be, 20, 25 in general. It's really not a big swing, what you're trying to do. Even though in a zone 4, if I had you 3/4 with most players on here, they could hit it 75 if they hit it solid. But what you're really trying to do in this program is, you'll see this, like even with the deceleration drills, is you're trying to create. I want everybody to train much slower in their downswing, kind of superficially, to where they have to, when they slow down, then it exposes them more. Because if I let players just swing hard, they can adjust and flick at it, and they don't learn anything. But if I slow them down, then they hit bad shots because they realize they're out of position, or it feels really awkward. Whereas if you slow a pro down, you could have them take it up super fast backswing and then literally go in slow motion, and they can hit it at any speed. So they could hit it, if they were trying to hit it 20 yards, they could do that. They could hit 30, 40. You could change their speeds however you want to go, and they can feel all that. So it's really just all these drills on the in any stage. You're really just trying to, in training, slow the downswing down. Whether you're doing a zone, especially 3, 4, 5, you're just slowing that down in the downswing so you can build feel. And so anyway, going back to the scale, that I think will really help you is, instead of thinking zones now, just think hitting it 15 yards, and then go from, say, you've been in the program now a month, so I'd say go to 25 yards and master that, and then go to 35 yards and just inchworm your swing up, and don't jump from one scale to a big scale, if that makes sense. And just inchworm your way up until you end up, a zone. There is all these zone stuff. It's just labels, so it's really no such thing. I just have to classify it so I can relate and for players better. But the bottom line is with this is that the swing, zone 5 for Bubba Watson is going to be a lot different than a zone 5 for Jason Duffner, and they're both major champions. So you have to find what works with you with that. But work the scale, inchworm your swing up. And then you'll find where you can't get away with it. If you get to 75 yards and you try to, you keep hitting it, and all of a sudden you end up with a sandwich, you get to 90, and everything after 90 is bad. Then wherever you're at, just kind of cut it off there. Cut your length of your swing off at that point, and realize that that's plenty to, hit solid and far enough. And then that's where your 7-iron swing and your driver swing would go as well. So I hope that helps you. I know it'll help you, actually.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a good question. Yeah, you're not the only one with that zone 3 either. From zone 3 to zone 4. If you're getting zone 3 as good as it sounds like you are, though, you're in really good shape. Because one, you're hitting at 50 yards. So we just kind of got to back you down and then kind of inchworm it up. But that's a good sign. So we just have to inchworm it up till you find your kind of that sweet spot like you found with that 50-yard shot. Let's see if there's any more questions.
Matt, you want these zone drills done using 56, or I know before you mentioned 60 was okay too, or is 56 still what you want to go with?
56, if you 60 is okay too if you like your 60. Some guys don't hit their 60 good. Some guys the 60 is not fit correctly. So the 56 is usually the safest club. That's typically what I'll grab, but 60s is good too. If you hit your 60 better than your 56, I would use it. If you hit your 56 better in general, I would use that because you don't want any distractions. If you don't hit either one of them good, then just you just have to start the small swings and work your way up. But I would pick your favorite club between those two and train with it. And there's another problem that guys will do, which I think this is a great question, is they'll take like a 7-iron and try to do hit it 20 yards, 50 yards. There's a reason why I'm doing it with a sandwich. You don't want to use it with like an 8-iron or 9-iron. You're trying to get a 2 for 1. You're trying to build your hands and your timing, so you got a really good tight short game. So you're building your hands. If you're trying to do that with your 7-iron, the ball's going to come out superficially low, and you're not going to understand the trajectory relative to what you're trying to do, and it's not the way to do it. And where I've found success is having players do this with a sand wedge or L wedge, and just again using that 5-yard scale or that 10-yard scale, and don't bypass. Don't jump yardages. Don't go from 20 to 40. Go 20, master it. What's mastering it? That's where basically you can, if you have a hard time understanding what compression is, you can listen to the sound of the ball. I've got videos on here. I've got the camera close. You can hear the thump, the sole of the club hitting the ground. That sound, there's a certain sound you're looking for. And because I know we have players of all levels, the better players understand this, but the new players may not. But that's where the timing contact point training in the bunker will help, getting a feel for how much divot you should take, the angle that you attack at, and so forth. Then trajectory, if you have problems with trajectory, it should come out fairly low. It should not hop straight up. And so you have to listen to the sound of the ball, which is your compression, and your initial start line. Because if you're hitting a 5-yard shot and your ball's 3 yards off line, that means that you're going to be probably 100 yards off line with a 7-iron or 5-iron. So you should be on a 5-yard shot. You should be landing with inches of your target, it's not in a compression on a 5-yard shot. It's not going to be. You should have a little small pinch. It shouldn't be you're trying to try. It's impossible to have this big thumping sound on a 5-yard shot. You don't want it because you'd be punching at it. So the compression there kind of is not as important as it gets to where you get to 15, 20 yards and so forth. But so the trajectory will be on a 5-yard shot very, very, very low, just because the speed of the ball, the velocity it's coming off on. So, and then you have the trajectory or the ball control, and your ball you should hit it 5 yards. So it's not going to. If it's going to have spin one way or the other, I would tell everybody on here, or even better players, to have a draw spin or forward spin. You don't want a cutting side spin. And all that is on, if you study all the videos, and I know there's players that have, but that's all on here too. It talks about the type of shot you're trying to hit. It won't be all in the same video. You have to kind of go through them all. But and then same thing with 10-yard scale. So you get the 5-yard scale, then you go to a 10-yard scale. You develop your hands, and then you move forward.
And these are all carry distances. When you say 5, 10, etc., they're all carry distances, correct?
Yeah, they're carry distances, yeah. And when the ball hits, it's going to have a little forward roll on it if you're doing it correctly. If it's just hitting and it's cutting and spinning right, or just really stopping, they're probably putting too much downward hit on it. Obviously, if it's hitting and it's rolling 30 feet, you've sculled it, so you kind of have to play that game. But it should have a little forward roll, and the reason why we do that, again, this is about a ball striking progression. How I built this, it's not necessarily short game is short game. It's different. This is a short swing, so if we take the spin off with these short shots and the ball's kind of moving forward, then when we start adding velocity and we work at it progresses up the scale, and that 7-iron comes off and it's a low spin. And anybody will tell you that amateurs actually have higher spin rates than pros. They think they don't. They do. They don't with their wedges, but they do with like their 8, 9s, and longer clubs. The pros have a more level flight of ball. Even though if they hit it high, they have a lower spin than amateurs, because their amateurs are massing the ball. So if you're coming off and you're hitting these little 5 and 10 yard shots with way too much spin, when you start applying speed to it, then it's going to just be spinning off the face, and you're going to lose. It'll start to affect your trajectory, your ball control, your compression, everything. So we want that ball to be moving forward as it hits, and you start figuring out how to do it. How you do it, well, certainly we have our ways. The timing contact point's really not negotiable, but the grip alignment point is different. There's a lot of, if you get the job done, you'll know, because the sound of the ball be different. The balls, you have full control of those 4 things. I'm not sure if it matters at all at that point. If you get those things under control, you're going to be happy camper. So. But yeah, that's a good question. They're landing. Those are landing distances.
When you take your iPad from down the line, do you have a specific, an exact spot you have it? Sometimes when I'm looking down the line off of my reverse cam, I can't tell if I have the cam too far, on the ball line, on the toe line, on the hand line.
Yeah, you would put it where the hand line is. So, and it doesn't have to. Just as long as it's not really tilted way left or way right, then you get your angles and your opticals out kind of messed up. But yeah, I would just. And most of the stuff we do is face on. But I don't have a problem with guys training if they're doing training and they're working soft and they're trying to change the shape of their downswing or something like that, to match up those variable planes, what they feels right for them and so forth. It's not a big deal. We're training with the baseline. You'll see me at that table quite a bit, and it's just a little cheap table. You can use anything. It's got to be on the side of the shaft, though. That's the secret to that. And so if I had it built like I really wanted it, I would have it where I could put the club down and it was on the side of the shaft. But I keep that on the side of the shaft, and so it shows you that that's the control. The side of the shaft is the middle of it, and the lead side of it is what you want to have full control over. And how you angle that shaft can give you a major advantage. It's not the only way to do it. So like in that variable plane thing that I came up with, the side of the shaft, the way I teach it, gives you an advantage. And I don't think when somebody comes here and I should demonstrate it for them, and they understand in 2 seconds, like they get it, like they understand, like they got an advantage if they get the side of the shaft that way. And the way you do that is through the right wrist, which I'm doing a video on right now. If you get your right wrist in a certain way, and I don't want people to guess on here, so just wait to the video, which I should have up hopefully by tomorrow or the next day, depending on when. But it's based on your back. I shouldn't say right wrist. It's based on your rear wrist. So if you're left-handed, it'd be your left. If you're right-handed, it's your right. And if you get the side of the shaft angled a certain way, I think you should be doing it in your backswing because it gives you an advantage. But you don't have to. And you actually don't have to do what I'm talking about to be a great player either. It's just that the best ones do it. But there's great players that didn't do it. There's a lot. That's my point with this, is there's a lot of ways to do it. As long as you find my goal for every player is that they find the slot in their swing where they slot it. And what I mean by that is when they look up, the ball's going right where they're trying to go. They have those 4 things covered. They can have steep swings, shallow swings, neutral swings, whatever. My goal for them is not to say, look, I've got the perfect float or the perfect containment, I've got this so good or whatever. That's just all stuff. I'm looking for success, which is ball flight and scores, right? I mean, the whole thing. And so every player has their own slot, their own thing that kind of makes it work for them. And this program, it can't make you do it, but I think it can lead you to it. I really do. I've seen it. Well, I know it happens over and over and over, and with these players. And you don't have to be coordinated, you don't have to be talented, you don't have to work out, although I think that helps you. It aids to it a little quicker, but you don't have to do all that. I've seen very uncoordinated players that got on here and just studied it and applied it and used the iPad and trained, and next thing you know, they're out winning, And age hadn't proved to be a big object, Jim, I don't think he's on here tonight, but he won a club championship, 72-69, and he was struggling like crazy before he got in this program. Been to a bunch of different instructors, and his game was in a wreck, and blah blah blah. Couldn't break an egg, like from what he would tell you. And he was very lost in the jungle, and very very good player now. So, but he's not the only one. There's a lot of guys now who've done it so long that have found success. But it's just working those small scales, and there's a lot of information. I make long videos because I don't want to leave. It's not that I'm trying to be technical or this. I've done this my whole life, and so I've done it relative to most guys my age. I've done it 3 times as long as they have. I've literally done this my whole life, and so I've seen so many pitfalls and traps that players get into, both mentally and physically, and swing ideas and theories and fads, and this comes out today, that's out tomorrow. The technology comes around, and then everybody thinks TrackMan. Look, if TrackMan made everybody great, first of all, if that's the case, Tiger would have won every tournament he played in, because he was the first player to put TrackMan in his house and train with it religiously. And when he trains, it's another level. And his game went off the charts the wrong way. He got bad, and he lost that field sensitivity and awareness, and he became a numbers and a robot. And there's the other players that followed that. Jason Duffner tried to do the same thing, and he got injured, and his game kind of got bad. He said he got away from doing the things he was doing, and all this technology, it's cool for club fitting, but it's not going to, because it tells you the angle that you're putting the club on and this and that, it's not going to make you a great player. There's not a tool out there that can do it, because unless they can track electricity through your body and blood flow, and they can't measure your heart yet either. And until they can do that, I'm not in. And because that's what true chi is, it's the flow. And it's not measurable. There's not any 3D analysis machine. I've seen everything out there, from Xenolink to my TPI and to KVS and all that stuff, and own them. And I'm telling you, nothing tracks energy. You track your own energy. You create it. You get to use it and apply it the way you like. And if it's not working, it's because you're not finding it and getting into it. And the only person that can really do that is yourself. So, that's why these old school instructors aren't going anywhere, like Butch Harmon and Bill Harmon and these guys that I have a lot of respect for, that still teach old school. Harvey Penick, that'll never go away, because it's teaching people how to feel and simple stuff and effective. And but I do think I'm glad I have the background in all this. I'm glad I went as deep as I went in the biomechanics world, and I can still continue to study human movement and so forth. But it's also, I'm glad I went so deep on that journey, because I can truly, when I talk to somebody about it, especially if it's a high-level player, that this is where you don't need to go, or if a player's coming up, I've been there. I can't just say, well, don't do it because I don't believe in that stuff. It's because I've tested it, I've seen it, and I still think that it's all inside of the player, and everybody can find it if they're patient and they learn to listen to themselves, and then have some guidance. That's all I'm here for, is guidance. So, but anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. So, any other questions? I don't think there's any text, so it looks like that's probably. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I said one quickie.
Hey, Mike.
I mean, really short. Yeah, I mean, on really short shots, little chips.
Yep.
Do you think on those? I mean, is that something?
Yeah, that's a good question too. In training, probably, yeah. And well, you say on a 5-yard shot, when you're doing the sinking, you just don't have time. You know what I mean? It probably some of you that have tried that have figured that out. Like. It's just kind of hard to do. But when you get into like 10 and 15, you can start to add some of it, just a little bit, because it's all relative. If you watched, when a player loads, like if we're talking zones, if they go to a zone 5, all these players, when they get in transition, that transitional zone, they're starting to sink and come out of there lower than where they started, going back in their backswing. And again, it's not a squat. It's some of you new guys, the sinking is different than squatting. But so it's if you were hitting a 20-yard shot, you wouldn't sink as much on a 20-yard shot as you would in a a long swing, if that makes sense. It's just because it's happening. Because the more you sink, the more power. There's a point where you can start to lose power. It's like you don't squat to dunk a basket. You don't squat, put your butt on the floor to dunk a basketball. There's a point where you lose. But there's also a point where when you're sinking that you connect where that's all you got. And it's a lot lower than most people think. And I would tell you on a 5-yard shot, no. I mean, if it's on the golf course, absolutely not, because it's chipping. You're just going to be more arm-based, stay tall, don't do anything crazy. But if you're in training on, say, it's hard to say. It's a great question, and I'll have to go out and test all that tomorrow. But I'd say 10 yards I sink some, but it's not going to be sinking like I would be sinking in like a zone 5 and so forth in the transition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'll put that on the. It's a great question too. So it's a good one for that. Let's see. But it's definitely not the same amount. But I would tell you on chipping, because chipping in Boston, we're not on this short swings. We're not teaching you how to chip, even though you're getting some of the chipping forms. It's you're trying to build a swing that will the ball striking that when you let it, you're trying to change a short swing into to where when you let it go, it's just it's crushing the ball. And so whereas in chipping, it's mostly arm based. The swing you teach, it's not a lot. You're not trying to sink your legs and gain power. Anything you're trying to take it away, more steep, stricter top thing. That's Paul Runyon, where you don't have a lot of, you're not trying to create pull and pop and all this stuff. You don't need it. And it's not relative. It's just not something you need. So that's a good question. Any other questions? I do want to go over one other thing because of what I said about TrackMan. And I own a Foresight. I worked with TrackMan for 2 years, but I own a Foresight suit. Somebody may go, well, what's that? But what I'm trying to say is for fixing your golf swing. For fitting, I believe iron fitting should be done outdoor personally, if you can, if it's possible. I believe the drivers should be done that way as well. But you can, if you're indoor and you go to a shop you like, you need a launch monitor, because nobody's going to be able to tell you if you're hitting into a net or even one of those simulator things that without the launch monitor, really what you are. And your driver fitting is probably your most important fitting in your bag. I would believe when you got driver, and you can say wedges and putters are kind of a tie for second, but your driver is the most important club in your bag you can have fitted to that's like your best buddy, in my opinion. If you're already a great driver, then it's not relevant for you, but most people can always use to drive it better. And I don't mean further, just consistent that gets you in the fairway, you can hit off the short grass. And you do need, the technology is no doubt, the human eye just can't pick that up and calculate that. If you get a really good fitter, they can. I've done it forever, but if you get somebody that really understands ball flight, they can see in the general areas, but they're not going to be able to tell you exact. And so that's where that stuff that technology can really help you out, and where you want to take advantage of it. You just don't. I just don't believe that you're going to be able to have a computer fix your golf swing, because it's not tracking what's going on, the blood flow and electricity of your body. Thermal imaging is the closest thing that they're still years away from that. But any other questions? If you have questions about the webinar tonight or your swing, you just didn't ask them, the winds in the next couple of days looks it's going to be pretty brutal, but so the follow-up video will be as soon as I can get out there and not get crushed by the wind. So if you have questions, just email me at elitegolfing@gmail.com. Send the questions that you need answered, and I'll put them on the webinar, and I'll take some of the questions we had tonight on there and try to answer those as well. I think there's some really good questions and things we can cover. And unless there's any other questions, we'll wrap it up. All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks a lot, and I'll look forward to seeing you here in a couple weeks.
Hey, Matt, thanks.
Yeah, take care. Have a great one.